Hey guys, welcome to today's
Real life
episode. And
leaders.
we have Weldon Long. He's an author and he's written 3 books: The Upside of Fear, The Power of Consistency, and Consistency Selling. And he actually was in prison for, I think it was 13 years. And now he has created an amazing life for himself. So Weldon, welcome.
Awesome. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about this. You were in prison for 13 years and then decided to just turn yourself completely around and create this
Yeah.
prosperity mindset like I've never seen.
Hey, that's kind of it in a nutshell. We can just end the podcast there. There's the story, right? So yeah, but that's kind of what happened in a 30,000 foot perspective. I was a real knucklehead growing up. I was a 9th grade high school dropout, started running the streets and using drugs and drinking, the typical knucklehead kind of stuff. And when I was 23 years old, again, being a 9th grade high school dropout, didn't have a lot of direction in my life, no real career path or trade or anything. And one night at 23 years old, I was high on cocaine and picked up a guy hitchhiking. He and I got the bright idea to hold these 2 men at gunpoint. So at 23 years old, I was sentenced to prison for the first time and did about 4.5 years, and they paroled me. So I got out of prison the first time at around 27, and I was still a 9th grade high school dropout. I was now a convicted felon, and unfortunately had started the process as defining myself as this kind of thug, knucklehead loser. And that was a terrible mistake, obviously, to begin to define myself in these very negative terms. So I made it about 18 months, ended up hooking up with some guys I met in the joint, went back to the joint a second time, this time for only 2 years on gun charges and parole violations. Got out again at 30 years old, and now I'm a 2-time convicted felon and was fully kind of immersed in that lifestyle and defining myself as a convict, as a criminal, as whatever. And of course, when I got out the second time, couldn't really find work. I took a job doing some sketchy telemarketing with some guys I met out in Las Vegas. I tell people I should have been suspicious when they hired me. It didn't say much about their hiring process, and did the telemarketing for about 2 years until one day the feds came in and we were all indicted on federal money laundering and mail fraud charges, and then went to federal prison for 7 years and walked out of federal prison after those 7 years. I was 39 years old, but had fortunately during that last stretch, had kind of that moment of clarity. And so when I came out that third time at 39 years old, I was a man on a mission. And we can talk more about, what that incident was and how it impacted me. And then, what were the changes that had to happen for me to go from that. Within 5 years of walking out of prison that last time, I built an Inc. 5000 company, sold that, began writing books and speaking and consulting and training on the mindset and the business building processes that I learned. So that again is kind of a, yours was a 30,000 foot perspective. There's the 20,000, and we can get down to the ground level as much as you want to dig into it.
So let's talk a little bit because this is real life leadership. And so I really like to tell stories of kind of what, like, really get down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some examples and then you, tell me what you would do to change someone's mindset shift.
Gotcha.
So, right now I am in real estate. I own a real estate company. We have about 20, we're in 20 states now. And, all of our agents are kind of in this mindset, right? Like, interest rates have increased massively. We went from, 3% interest rates to now we're hovering at 6 or 7%. So they've doubled. So the agents are having a really bad mindset. A lot of people are even thinking about getting out of the business, right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, maybe I need to get another job. So what would you say to somebody who was kind of in that kind of funk? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really timely, as you mentioned, for folks in the real estate industry. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes economically and with the lending rates and different things. So what I would first respond to is, the idea that some of the agents may begin to expect things to be bad. And expectations are really kind of a crazy thing, right? Because they tend to manifest themselves for better or for worse. That's why our mothers always told us, be careful what you wish for. And there is such a thing as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I expect bad things and bad things happen. But when you really understand what's going on neurologically, that starts to make a lot more sense. So let me kind of give you the quick neurology 101. And this is coming from a ninth grade high school dropout. So it's at the street level. It's not at the academic level, but it's the way I understand it. So when we have a thought, any thought in our brain, it sends an impulse to a part of our brain called the hypothalamus. So you have this thought, good, bad, happy, or sad, and it shoots a little bolt of electricity, basically, this very powerful electromagnetic field up here. And it shoots a little bolt of electricity into the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus begins to secrete chemicals that trigger the corresponding emotion. So as an example, if I have a thought, I'm very happy and very loving towards someone or something, my brain starts producing dopamine and endorphins, and my emotional state is now happy and loving. The emotional state is a chemical reaction to the thought. If I get angry or if I get mad at something or someone, my brain starts producing epinephrine and adrenaline. And now my emotional state is angry, right? Or scared or whatever. So it's really important to understand that the emotions do not happen in a vacuum. They are a chemical reaction in our brains based on the thought. So the thought triggers the emotion, literally, does it internally in the brain. You can't control it. Once the chemicals start, they kind of have a life of their own. But then the emotion starts driving the behaviors, right? So as an example, if I have a happy, warm, and loving thought, my wife walks in the room, and now my chemicals in my brain, I'm full of dopamine and I'm feeling loving. When we get off this call, I don't ignore her. I walk over and say, hey, babe, I didn't realize you were coming down here today to the office or whatever, right? So now my behaviors are a direct reflection of my emotions. If I'm angry at somebody or if I'm in a fight with somebody, I'm going to have, behaviors based on that emotional anger, right? Fight or flight, whatever the case may be. And then, of course, those behaviors drive some particular result. So thoughts trigger emotions, emotions trigger behaviors, behaviors, of course, trigger results. That's kind of a basic neurology 101 that we go through, according to neuroscientists, about 30,000 times a day. We have a thought about something, can be about money, can be about food, can be about love, and that produces a certain emotion that drives a particular behavior. That behavior over time produces results. It's not rocket science. It is brain science, but it's not rocket science. But here's the tricky part. Our behaviors and our emotions are a product of our thoughts, even if the thought is wrong. This is the really scary part about human nature. You can believe something that's untrue. You can believe a lie. You can believe something false. But even if it's false, if you believe it's true, it produces the corresponding emotions and behaviors, which of course trigger the results. Let me give you an example, and I think it'll make more sense. And then we'll translate this into business and sales and real estate. So imagine you're walking out of the theater one night, it's late at night, you got your spouse, your significant other, and a couple of kids with you. You're walking across the parking lot. As you're walking across the parking lot, some guy comes running towards you. He's running at you and your family, and he's screaming. He's covered in blood. He's got a knife in his hand. He's running towards you and your family, right? Within a nanosecond, that thought is danger, danger, danger. Within another nanosecond, your brain is now producing epinephrine and adrenaline, and now you're feeling that heightened sense of anger, outrage, fear, whatever it is, right? The corresponding emotion. And now you have to take some behavior, right? Fight or flight. What am I going to do? This all happens, of course, in just like a blink of an eye. Well, you decide very quickly you can't outrun this person because you got little kids with you, so you know you have to fight. So you step towards him to kind of protect your family, and you swing and you catch him in the jaw. You drop him like a sack of potatoes. What's the result? You protected your family, just like it's supposed to happen. The thought triggered the emotions, the reaction, the behavior. So far, so good. Until the police get there and the guy regains consciousness. And when he regains consciousness, you realize that you misinterpreted the situation. Your thought was wrong. Turns out this guy was no threat to you whatsoever. It's a teenage kid. The blood was fake. The knife was fake. A teenage kid running across the parking lot to meet some friends for a Halloween party. Your thought was wrong. But even though your thought turned out to be inaccurate, how real were the emotions you felt during that event? How real was the behavior of clocking him in the jaw? How real is the result of his broken jaw? You see, this happens in life all the time. We have a false belief about something that triggers the corresponding emotion, that triggers the corresponding behaviors, which of course trigger the results, and it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy. So now let's go to the modern day real estate agent who gets up in the day and says, man, I got a showing today, but these people are never going to buy this house. My God, have you seen the interest rates? They're nearly 7%. I mean, people aren't going to buy anymore. They're just, man, it's just going to be a waste of my time, another disappointment. That's the thought. What's the very natural emotions chemically that are going to come from that thought? Very disempowering, maybe borderline depressing, right? Just totally bad expectations. I'm wearing that thought now emotionally. It comes through in my body language. It comes through in the words that I say, in the tone of my voice. And what's my behaviors? I go through the motions and I say, this is the pool room. This is the master bedroom. And the prospect, the buyer, is not the least bit impressed with me or my description of this property. And what's the result? They say, okay, thanks, but no thanks. And the agent walks out and say, I knew it. I knew they weren't interested. But they created that reality with that thought that triggered that emotional mindset and that very disempowering behavior. Now let's take another agent. They wake up in the morning, they've got a prosperity mindset. They're like, I get it. You know, interest rates are high right now, but you know what? I'm old enough to remember when interest rates were 12 and 14 and 15% and people were still buying homes, right? And the reality is, yeah, the interest rates are higher, but guess what? The housing market's depressed. They're going to save $100,000 on this property. That's going to more than compensate for the higher interest rate. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to deliver the value. I'm going to sell this home. I'm going to paint a dream. I'm going to rock their world. What emotion comes from that thought? And it's showtime. I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I'm going to meet this prospect and I'm going to blow them away with the magic of this house. Everything that's amazing. Everything. Mr. Prospect, can you picture this? Imagine yourself here. See yourself having coffee here, right? Different behaviors. Same house, different behaviors. Same prospect, different behaviors, right? Those behaviors inspire people like, holy cow, yeah, I can see myself having coffee there. I can see myself sitting at the pool having a martini. Let's buy the house. And you know what? That agent walks out saying the same thing as the other one. I knew it. I knew people were still interested. You see, people have to understand we are walking, talking, living, self-fulfilling prophecies 30,000 times a day. You talk yourself into or out of bad situations. Are the circumstances different now than a year ago? Absolutely. But we all know that home values are down and there's a trade-off between higher interest rate or lower interest rate and premium home prices. It's all a trade-off. So I would say to the agent that's struggling, that's overwhelmed, you have to create a mindset, what I call the prosperity mindset. It's what I write about in my book, The Power of Consistency. A mindset that is programmed to thrive in the face of adversity. A mindset that is geared to overcome any challenge. That's the mindset of a winner. And that's the mindset we have to overcome difficult times. Listen, life on this planet can be pretty tough. We all get kicked in the teeth from time to time. And it's never perfect for anybody. We all have relationship issues, economic issues, financial issues, health issues. Problems are just inherent in our existence. The question is, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to respond to these events? And our mindset, our thoughts, and our expectations are the biggest driver of how we interpret these situations, how we react to them, and how we end up creating success and or failure based on our behaviors, which are triggered by the emotions, which are a direct reflection of our thoughts. And I hope that, I know it's a quick discussion of a lot of complicated issues, but that's what it's all about, the expectations.
And now a word from our sponsor, Kanzo Realty. Run your business your way, only at Kanzo Realty. You can have all the freedom with none of the standard real estate red tape. If you're an agent, you get to run the show however you want and be your own boss. If you want to launch a team, you don't have to jump through all the hurdles and holdups. From day one, you'll have tons of tools and perks to offer your team. Powerful real estate tech like KV Core, Brokerman, and Skyslope. If you want to be your own brokerage or already have your own brokerage, that's not a problem either. You'll still get to run it however you want. All Kanzo requires is a small Powered by Kanzo logo next to yours. You can be the broker, you can be the manager, and you get to determine splits. You get all the tech, admin support, ownership stock, and revenue share, but most importantly, all the freedom, all the time, only at Kanzo Realty.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that really understanding that it doesn't matter who you are, like you are just going to have problem after problem after problem. Like I always joke, like, this is what I always say, like, I feel like this is my life, like punch, 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 jab, hook. And then all I do, I just do like a little head swirl, a little smile. And I'm like, okay, how are you guys doing today? Because
Yeah.
it's like, it's so funny how people look at me all the time and they're just like, it just seems like everything's going so well for you and you're doing so wonderful. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't go around going like, oh, woe is me, da 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 da. And so people have the opinion of when you are a high level leader, they just go, oh, everything's perfect. You're always smiling.
Right.
Everything's good. But they don't see all the behind the scenes
Right.
jab, jab, hook, uppercut all in one day.
Right.
And if you get to the place where you can say, you know what? I'm already walking into my day knowing it's a jab, jab, hook, uppercut. I mean, we
Right.
already know at the minimum we're getting those 4 punches today.
Yep.
It actually makes things a little bit better because then when you don't get that final uppercut for the day, you're like, wow, what a good day.
Right. And I think it's really important to remember that our lives, our businesses, our relationships, they're not a reflection of the pow pow uppercut. They're a reflection of the response, right? How do you react to those things? And that's what people have to understand. They're under the misconception that really successful people never have any issues, don't have any problems. It's not that they don't have problems. It's just that they're experts at overcoming those challenges, those problems, and responded to them in such a way. For example, I tell people, I've earned millions of dollars. I became a millionaire. A few years out of prison, I was a millionaire for my first company that I sold. But the reality is my life today is not a reflection of going to prison for 13 years and being a 9th grade high school dropout. My life today is a reflection of how I responded to that situation. And that's what people have to understand. It's a great metaphor that you use, the jab, jab, uppercut. It's coming, right? It reminds me of that old scene from Wyatt Earp, where Wyatt Earp, or Tombstone, the movie, but Wyatt Earp, the character, after his brothers were, one was killed and one was wounded, and he was talking about, going to get the guys that hurt his family. He said, you tell him Wyatt's coming and hell's coming with him. Life's coming, and the uppercut jab is coming with it. The question is, how do we respond? We shouldn't even be surprised by the uppercuts and the jabs. Like everybody faces challenges. Everybody has the same 3 challenges in life: financial problems, which can be your financial condition, your employment, your business; relationship problems, divorces, people argue with family, argue with neighbors; and then health problems, mental, spiritual, or physical health problems. At some point, we all experience the ultimate health problem, right? So you're going to get challenges in those 3 areas. The question is, what do you do about it? How do you respond? And that response is what dictates the outcome, not the problem.
One of the books that you have, The Power of Consistency, you outline a 4-step process. You say
Yep.
there's focus,
Yep.
emotional connection, action, and responsibility. I
Yep.
want you to dive deep into that and give us a practical. I like everything to be a story
Sure.
and just practical. So give us something practical on someone, maybe even with like food, like if
Yeah.
someone's
Okay.
struggling with, we're now going into Thanksgiving and the holidays and they're wanting to lose weight. How would you apply that 4-step process?
Yep.
Focus, emotional connection, action, and responsibility.
Absolutely. So the first step is focus. Clarity is power. Concentration is power. 150 years ago, James Allen wrote that dispersion is weakness, concentration is power. We all understand the power of concentration. Think about the sun, how powerful the sun is. But think about how much more powerful it was when you were a kid with a magnifying glass, and you could harness that sun's energy, which was very powerful, but you could concentrate it. And now you could carve your name into a piece of wood with that magnifying glass, right? That is the effect of concentration. We have to get massive, crystal clear clarity on what we want to accomplish, right? That's step 1. So in the situation, the example you raise, I get to get a very clear picture of what I'm trying to accomplish with my health and fitness. I can't be vague. Why? Dispersion is weakness. Concentration is power. I need to be very specific. Now, you can define that however you want, but there has to be a specific definition. So in my case, for example, one of my primary health goals is controlling my blood pressure because my dad died when he was 59 years old of a heart attack. And so now that I'm that age, I'm very, very careful to monitor my blood pressure and do what I have to do to make sure it stays, the way it's supposed to stay. You have to get clarity. That clarity might be, I'm going to run a half a marathon. It might be, I want to lose 30 pounds. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as there is clarity. Clarity is power, right? Dispersion is weakness. Get a crystal clear perspective. That's the focus. Like, what exactly do I want? A very clear definition of it. Doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, the confused mind says, no, it needs to be simple. 1 or 2 specific health goals. Next step, E, emotional commitment. I've got to get deeply emotionally committed to A, the thing that I want, the weight loss, the blood pressure, the marathon, whatever it is. I got to get deeply emotionally committed, and I've got to identify what do I want and what 1 or 2 things that if I did every single day would help me get there. Not 100 things, not 10 things. Again, the confused mind says no. When Steve Jobs was interviewed before he passed away about Apple computers, he was asked by a reporter, to what you attribute all the success. He said, clarity and simplicity, focus and simplicity, right? So, okay, my goal is, we're going to say I weigh 230 pounds and my goal is to go to 200. Very specific, right? So now I got to get very committed to that. How do I do that? I write down what I want. I weigh 200 pounds, not in I will, or I might, or I really hope to, but in a very positive present tense sense. I write out, I weigh 200 pounds. Then I need to identify, for me personally, it's different for everybody. What do I need to do that if I did every single day, just 1 or 2 things would pretty much guarantee that I get there? And let's say, for example, I know that I need to abstain from alcohol and avoid sugar, right? If I do those 2 things, I'm probably going to eventually reach my goal. So I write down, I weigh 200 pounds. I consume only healthy foods. I do not consume sugar, carbohydrates, or alcohol, whatever it is, right? That's the first step in the emotional commitment. And then we have to, and we don't have time, unfortunately, to get into the power of the subconscious mind, but we have to program that into our subconscious mind. We do that with what I call a daily quiet time ritual. 10 or 15 minutes every single day, reviewing that plan, right? Reviewing that specific goal, visualizing it, getting very emotionally. Napoleon Hill said, imagine yourself already in possession of these things. 100 years ago, he said that in Think and Grow Rich. Imagine yourself already in possession of these things. You got to get deeply emotionally committed to those things. You do that through a 10 or 15 minute quiet time ritual, 10 or 15 minutes every day, visualizing and reviewing that goal. When I first did this, the first time I did it, I was in prison. My dad had died. I started reading about these things, and I wrote out what a perfect life for me would look like. I put toothpaste in the back of that sheet of paper and stuck it to the wall of my cell. And every day I would meditate on it, visualize it. It begins changing the emotions, right? Remember, thoughts trigger the emotions chemically. So as I begin to see myself as a healthier person, I see myself eating properly, I see myself exercising, whatever I need to do to get to that 200 pounds, it triggers different chemicals in my brain. And that drives more positive behaviors, just like we talked about earlier, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and results. But it starts driving more positive behaviors. So now I've daily reviewed that. That's emotional commitment. I got clarity in the first step, focus. In the second step, I identified exactly what I need to do and what I want and what I need to do. And I commit myself to that quiet time ritual. The third step is action. This is very powerful. This is where it all comes together. Little something called cognitive dissonance. As you probably know, this is one of the primary drivers of human behavior. Dissonance, and its essence, is the distance between something we say and something we do. So if we do something that we said we wouldn't do, or if we don't do something we said we would do, that creates anxiety, right? Mental health professionals call that cognitive dissonance. And humans don't like to be in a state of dissonance. We like to be in a state of resonance. We want to be at peace. We want our words and our deeds to be in alignment, right? It's just common sense kind of stuff. Well, what happens if I get up every day and I review my quiet time ritual? I weigh 200 pounds. I abstain from alcohol. I eat only healthy, nutritious foods. I do not consume sugar. And I visualize myself at 200 pounds. I visualize myself eating healthy. I visualize myself exercising. And then a few hours later at lunch, I find myself eating a cheeseburger and a piece of pie. What do you think I'm going to experience? My body's going to experience dissonance. Why? Because I told myself this morning, 4 hours ago, I visualized a different behavior, a different set of activities. Now I'm basically contradicting that, and I'm going to feel like a fish out of water. That dissonance is going to drive me crazy. So what happens? The next day I go to lunch, I'm like, that didn't feel good yesterday. I better order the salad. This is the most amazing part of human behavior. If you tell yourself and you visualize it every day, eventually one of 2 things has to happen, because the human condition will not stay in a state of dissonance. So one of 2 things has to happen. Either A, we have to start doing the thing, whatever the behavior is, or B, we have to quit doing the daily quiet time ritual. We have to quit lying to ourselves, right? And nobody wants to give up on the dream. If you stay focused on doing the daily quiet time ritual, visualizing the outcomes, visualizing the behaviors that are all geared towards achieving the thing you want, then Mother Nature takes over and starts driving those behaviors, because we'll do anything to avoid that feeling of dissonance, right? And that starts driving more positive behaviors. We all know if we drive the positive behaviors, the results can't be far behind, right? But sometimes people get back to a state of resonance. Rather than doing the thing that they told themselves they would do, they just quit reviewing the plan. They quit telling themselves anything positive. Now go eat the cheeseburger. Now go eat the pie. There's no dissonance. Why? Because you didn't tell yourself any different. So it's about personal accountability, setting a standard against which you live your life. And there's three main areas we talked about. We're talking about health now. It could be health, our business, and our relationships, the three key areas of our lives. You set the standard in this prosperity plan, what you want, what you need to do, and then you review it every single day, and Mother Nature will start driving those behaviors, because initially you'll screw up. We're human. But when you have the standard that you committed yourself to 4 hours ago this morning, you start driving those behaviors, because dissonance feels really, really crappy. Resonance feels good. So that's focus, emotional commitment, action, and the four-step responsibility is simply what you and I have been talking about, accepting that our life is not a reflection of our problems. Our life is a reflection of the decisions that we make about our problems. And whose responsibility is that? It's my responsibility to have better responses to the challenges I face in life. Better responses guarantee better outcomes. Now, that's a really condensed version of a program we teach in a couple of days, but that's the essence of it right there. And I write about this in The Power of Consistency. It's seemingly so simple that people often overlook it, but it's so powerful it can move mountains. I remember when The Power of Consistency came out, I got a call from a guy named Ed Nottingham. He's a PhD and a clinical psychologist, like a really, really smart guy. And he's written a book of it himself. He works for FedEx and teaches mindset to the executives there, leadership, from a very academic, neurologist kind of way. And he calls me up and he says, Mr. Long, I got to tell you, this book is the simplest explanation of the neuroscience behind decision-making and the principles that are the underpinnings of rationally motive behavior therapy I've ever read in my life. And I'm like, there's a name for this stuff? It's just common sense. So I come from a very, very basic street level perspective, but it's been confirmed by many neurologists that I've worked with that say, man, that's the simplest way to explain what's going on up here. Get focused, deeply emotionally committed, take consistent action, let Mother Nature, cognitive dissonance help you drive those behaviors, accept responsibility for your decisions, because those decisions determine the outcome, not the problems that happened in the first place. And again, that's a really quick overview, but that's what happens.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Yeah, easiest way is weldonlong.com, WELDON, weldonlong.com is my website. We're on all social media at Weldon Long. And of course, the books are on Amazon, or you can get links from the website and get there as well.
Awesome. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.